Hearing no objections, it is so decided.
Relief after a long and stressful fortnight. The conference faced challenges right to the end.
Dear delegates,
The day began with confusion and uncertainty. A delivery of what looked like pizza boxes, in fact, documents for the UN Secretary-General. A great deal was at stake.
we've had 2 incredibly intense weeks of negotiations in Glasgow, and we arrive at what I believe is the moment of truth. And this is the moment of truth for our planet, and it's a moment of truth for our children and our grandchildren.
Negotiators broke up into huddles, a rare glimpse of bargaining that normally happens behind closed doors. The American envoy John Kerry with China's chief negotiator Xi Jinping, arguing line by line about fossil fuels. China and India are worried about slowing down their development.
How can anyone expect that developing countries can make promises about phasing out coal and fossil fuel subsidies? Developing countries have still to deal with their development agendas and poverty eradication.
Then Alex Sharma, the conference chair, began his own shuttle diplomacy. First, trying to persuade the Chinese to support the agreement. Next, checking in with the Americans, and then with the Indian delegation. In the end, one of the biggest obstacles in these talks was over the future of coal. The early drafts had talked about phasing out this dirtiest of fossil fuels. But after a last-minute flurry of negotiations, that was changed to phasing down. It sounds like a minor alteration, and indeed, many are asking what it means. Coal is the biggest single source of greenhouse gas, but countries that depend on it managed to get the agreement watered down, which left others very unhappy.
Let us be clear. We do not need to phase down, but to phase out coal and fossil fuel subsidies.
We know full well that coal has no future. And this is what we're working on with our own plans to put an end to coal in Europe in the foreseeable future.
It's also vital that we protect this package.
Faced with all this, Mr. Sharma's emotions got the better of him. Were things going wrong? But enough countries were reluctantly giving their support.
We do so only, and I really want to stress, only, because there are critical elements of this package that people in my country need as a lifeline for their future.
History has been made here in Glasgow.
That's for others to judge when we see if the pledges made here to reduce emissions and to boost aid to the poorest nations are actually delivered in the years to come. David Shuckman, BBC News in Glasgow.
Piece by piece, after 2 weeks of intense negotiations, uniting people from all over the world, a plan for the future of our planet has come together. But will it stop temperatures rising over 1.5 degrees? At the start of the conference, every country submitted plans to cut their greenhouse gas emissions, and scientists have been crunching the numbers. Global temperatures are already 1.1 degrees over pre-industrial levels. If every nation carries out its long-term pledges, we get to 1.8 degrees. But if you look at what countries are actually doing, a more likely outcome is 2.4 degrees.
This is more progress on climate than we've seen before. But in an absolute sense, we are miles and miles away from where we need to be, and we're still on course for really catastrophic warming.
The Glasgow conference clearly hasn't solved the problem, but will some aspects of what's happened here keep 1.5 alive? Coal, the most polluting fossil fuel, will be reduced but not phased out. Some nations will cut methane, a potent greenhouse gas. Tackling deforestation has been promised too. And importantly, countries are being asked to return next year with better plans to cut emissions.
We need these governments to really come back with enhanced action, not just empty pledges, not just about net zero by 2050, but the actions that they're going to take in the short term.
So how will the Glasgow Agreement affect all of us? How are our lives going to change? Ultimately, this will impact everything, from how we get around to the food we eat and how we heat our homes. But this will take time. Our fragile planet is already changing, and while there has been progress in Glasgow and 1.5 degrees hasn't been lost, it will take a monumental effort to stop temperatures from rising above that. Rebecca Morrell, BBC News, Glasgow.